It's okay. Look, the hottest movies to review sometimes are the ones where the story is bigger than the individual film itself. And not only did Birth of a Nation turn out to be exactly that, it's pretty much been there since it first showed up. See, you remember last year when people were justifiably taking the Oscars to task for basically not nominating hardly any black people? Well, the Sundance Film Festival was happening at the same time, so suddenly everyone's antenna went up for anything that looked like a black film that could be a potential Oscar nominee, because obviously there was going to be a premium on that kind of material. And the movie everyone seemed to hit upon was Birth of a Nation, a biography of slave rebellion leader Nat Turner, written, directed, produced, and starring Nate Parker as a passion project explicitly undertaken out of his frustration at the lack of good roles for black actors, so committed to the cause that it borrowed its title from an infamous pro-KKK silent epic to drive the point home. I mean, holy shit, it's easy to see how it felt like an answer to a shitload of people's prayers, right? And it ended up winning the festival's grand jury and audience awards prize. But then it came out that Parker had a rape charge back in college that got adjudicated under some very shady circumstances, and, well, suffice it to say, fuck, the meta-narrative is now a lot more complicated than it otherwise would have been, since all along the whole idea of this film had been tied to the idea of its filmmaker, who'd cast himself as the hero in multiple senses of the word, and now looked like a lot less than that. So, but how is the actual movie? Like I said, it's okay. It's fine. Taken entirely on its own merits, it's a decently entertaining, occasionally inspired work of historical melodramatic myth-making. Ironically, the filmmaking and filmmaker that it most brings to mind is Mel Gibson, inasmuch as it's a stylish, ultra-violent, not terribly nuanced work of history as larger-than-life myth-making, positively dripping in heavy-handed Christian religiosity, wherein moral authority is conferred by the proliferation of iconographic hero shots depicting the writer-director star posing like a cross between Jesus Christ and Goku. Now look, if what you're shooting for is 12 Years a Slave crossed with Braveheart, a biopic of Nat Turner culminating in the violent rise and brutal crushing of his infamous 1831 slave rebellion is probably the best possible place to start, even if the end result ends up more along the lines of The Patriot in terms of execution. This is a glossy, lurid, hyper-real work of folk history mythologizing that in its best moments feels like a monument in motion, and in its less than best moments feels like the Catcher Freeman stuff from the Boondocks. And the thing is, that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that approach inherently. The mythic, almost pulpy Campfire Tales version of history is every bit as vital a component, in my opinion, to how a society processes its own history as the purely factual academic record is. And it could easily be argued that since The Record tried for a long time to diminish or even erase events in black history like this as though they'd never happened in the first place, and they only survived by being passed down as cultural folklore, telling Nat Turner's story in that way in itself is a wholly appropriate carrying on of tradition from a certain perspective. I mean, why shouldn't this particular figure get the same lionization that's already been afforded to figures like Paul Revere, Davy Crockett, or Wyatt Earp? And when Birth of a Nation is surfing that particular wave, that's when it works. The first 2 acts worth of playing out the inhuman indignities of slavery are horrific and nasty and luridly compelling in that masochism as righteousness vein that pairs so disturbingly well with all the super on-the-nose, ham-fisted biblical stuff where Turner is a prophesized savior having visions of his spiritual inner self battling sinister figures and being gazed upon beatifically by literal fucking angels. And as build-up, it makes all of the brutal payback in Act 3 play out as legitimately rousing, crowd-pleasing stuff, right up to a final shot that kicks ass like it's out of a fucking Robert Rodriguez movie. One of the good Robert Rodriguez movies, obviously, I mean. But unfortunately, there's a lot more respectable movie in between all of this, and that's a lot less compelling. Not bad necessarily, just kind of weightless and uninteresting. It's all very well-intentioned and sincere, but the problem with half the movie being basically Black 300 and then trying to make the other half serious contemplative drama is that the kind of one-dimensional human avatars that fit so well into heightened mythic history lack the depth of character to be compelling at a regular human level, especially when you're talking about the main character we spend 99% of the fucking movie with. You see, whatever else may be true about Nate Parker, it's obvious he worked his ass off on this movie, and he's going for broke up there on screen, but whether as a result of his own screenplay or his own acting chops, he ends up feeling like a limited instrument as a leading man. He's really damn good whenever Turner is delivering soaring speeches, suffering nobly through torturous punishments, belting out sermons, and meting out vigilante justice. That all works, but whenever the film slows down and tries to be real, the character is flat and shallow, and so is everybody else, unfortunately. Still, as a cultural artifact, it feels important and necessary, and the parts that work really fucking work. And for the kind of movie that ultimately mostly exists to, if we're being honest, be fired up on Blu-ray once or twice a month every February in high schools across America, it pretty much gets the job done, but it's a frustratingly incomplete half measure overall. That ending, though, that ending really is fucking something. 2.5 stars, absolutely worth seeing, just adjust your expectations accordingly.